Hey man, how's it going? It's me, Mr. Theories, the least incorrect Deltarune theorist and mild egomaniac. Welcome to my incredibly condensed giant theory video, because the Chapter 5 trailer is kind of spelling out what I've been working on since 2023, which means I've run out of time. This one is another PowerPoint presentation because I don't have time to make it like a good video, as is tradition for my username, which would have been out so many months ago if I hadn't been sick for like a year. Seriously, all of 2025 I was sleeping for about 14 hours a day. Not exactly a premier combination when it comes to work productivity. It also didn't come out before chapters 3 and 4 because I'm just bad at making things. Full spoilers for Deltarune's chapters 1 through 4, Undertale, and a lot of Earthbound and Mother 3 actually. Seriously, this video expects you know them pretty well, so I hope you've played them yourself. So let's get into it by starting with warning! This is hyper condensed, but I've been at this for 4 years at least, man. I promised I've considered most of it already, it's just not included here for time reasons. It probably doesn't contradict anything I say, maybe. Something in chapter 4 might. Honestly, I don't know it as well as everything else in the series yet. Feel free to bring up stuff in the comments because of it. I might have actually not considered it, or if I have, I probably want to talk about it anyways. The start of this is going to mostly be straight up facts and author's intent stuff. A lot of this was stuff people just didn't pick up on because 11 years ago we weren't nearly as good at reading. This video may be based on a foundation of things that contradict part of why you enjoyed playing Undertale and Deltarune many years ago. You should not disagree with this based on what you felt a decade ago, and you should not let finding out more about the game you love ruin your experience. You should embrace your happiness from back then, and combine it with future happiness from increased understanding of the writing. It's not taking away anything, it's letting you experience twice as many stories from Toby Fox. In a way, I wish I was less of a huge-brained, media-literate genius at times, so I too could partake in the double tricky Tony special. #ego, #ego, #ego. I'm a bit more hyperbolic in this one than usual. This will be made clear on why later, but please do know that it's not because of any actual malicious nor hater energy. When I do bring up another content creator, please know it is because I respect someone a lot. It's basically an invite for you guys to go watch their videos or read their essays if they don't use YouTube, sometimes purely on an entertainment value alone. Like, guys, I'm the intentionally bad PowerPoint guy. This is actively embarrassing. Anyway, shout out to channel Willfire. I don't make any money on these videos yet. So any clickbait ranting is done for the love of the game, baby. Also because saying things with a rarely wide vernacular at high energy can be funny. Now let's get started with Earthbound, baby! Let's keep this short and sweet. In Earthbound, there's a scene where Ness and Paula are trapped underground. Then they use their psychic powers to call out to Jeff and project the player's control over to that character named Jeff. The character speaking here on the left, in the bottom left, is Paula. We never hear Ness speak. While you control Jeff as the player character, you never hear him speak either, because you will never, ever get to hear the protagonist you're controlling. You instead get narration from a narrator. Then, as soon as Jeff gets into the main party, because the protagonist becomes Ness again, we get to hear Jeff speak for the first time. That's where he says, "I'm Jeff." This is the basic inspiration for the narration in Undertale. A protagonist we can't hear, a narrator we do hear, and a canonical player playing the game. Yes, the player is canonical to Earthbound if you didn't know that. But you may be asking yourself something. And yes, Toby would be that unoriginal. Toby kind of has this special ability where he draws inspiration in exclusively ways that are good, because he's like 40 years old and plays games nobody has ever heard of, so nobody even realizes how derivative he is at times except for the people who played Mother 3. None of this is in bad ways either, because his characters are super well done, so when he dresses somebody up like a random boss fight and gives him music that's ripped straight out of Persona 4, everyone just goes, "Damn, that's a good smoothie." But yes, he does draw direct inspiration from many things, even for very important stuff. I believe my point here is solid, so let's start talking about something anyone actually cares about. The hit game, Undertale. As we're all true underheads here, I'm sure you're all already familiar with the now lost to time Determinator's character analysis, so I won't be going over it. Instead, I'll be going over what people said against it, and some things it doesn't bring up. Number 1, why would Kara say that? To which I say, ask Toby Fox. Like, I know that a lot of the times it seems unlikely for Kara as the narrator to say something, but honestly, I put that as Toby not realizing how much this game would be scrutinized and wanting the message to land more than he cared about the text being FNAF-style lore interrogated. Also, he does put a lot of intentional ambiguity in his games, making stuff like this harder to, piece together. Number 2. Who the hell makes an ending where at the end of their game they revealed who the narrator was the whole time and then don't make them the narrator the whole time? Like, I've actually seen stuff like this get retconned before in badly thought out sequels, not in the same game you're playing. Number 3. The author's intent was clear from room 1! The narration does not start until you meet Toriel. It's almost as if Kara awakens because they see a family member! It's like the reveal is supposed to recontextualize the whole game, but most of us just weren't media literate yet. Also, yes, I know you can open the menu before the narration starts, but I'm not saying Kara is the menus. Don't act dumb. Oh, what about love increasing determination? Well, you are thinking of Undertale Yellow. That's a fan game. Also, love and determination are two different things. You can find this out by playing the hit game Undertale. Now, honest to God, hand over your heart, gun to your head, swearing on your mama's grandmama's grave. Who do you think represents determination, the will to live, the refusal to die better? The kid who literally fuses their soul back together while fighting God of hyperdeath in the middle of the fight so that they don't lose. Or the one who dies 12 plus times to a level 1 skeleton. And, let's be real. Do you actually think it is more likely for Toby, known for writing characters so realistically we become attached to them, to write a character who only becomes fully sentient after killing 20 frogs and, bugs and bedsheet things? I forgot about mold spalls when I wrote this. But yeah, come on. Also, the player is explicitly canon in Undertale, because Frisk resistance is canon. There are 2 options here. Frisk is literally resisting so hard against the 2 separate beings trying to control their body and soul that they stop looking human. Or this random 10-year-old child is okay with mass murder. I don't think it's realistic for a random 10-year-old child to be a mass murderer, especially one as nice as Frisk. Actually, because of this and the rest of Kara's speech, if you don't agree with the assessment that the player, Kara, and Frisk are all canon, then Kara's speech becomes entirely impossible to understand, and you just have to decide that the ultimate ending of the game didn't actually happen and isn't canon, even though it affects other endings that everyone agrees are canon. I don't have time to prove that right now. I'm just gonna trust your own media literacy. This would mean that it's the player's guidance that's allowing Kara to fulfill their perceived purpose. But surely I have some sort of proof, foreshadowing about it early on. Some sort of incredibly important symbol that's widely known and used throughout the whole game. One with Trinity symbolism, but one of the 3 symbols in it is way bigger than the other. Oh my goodness! That's right! Even the Deltarune itself foreshadows that the 3 of us make a Trinity. 1 giant triangle descending from above representing us, the Decider. Then 2 more triangles. 1 for the narrator, and for lack of a better term, the other for the hero! The entire game, down to the very foundations of its lore, screams this at you the whole time, and for under 20 years, a lot of people think that the dead, traumatized ghost child is actually revealed as a real demon that hates you because they talk differently when doing their job as a narrator. I believe the 3 different roles that we have. We, the player, as the decider, we decide things, like movement and actions. Frisk takes the role of the hero, interpreting our commands, doing whatever they want within each command's limitations. Kara takes the role of the narrator and gives us the various options to choose from in the menus and the act screen. I do want to note that control is very obviously split, like in the Geno route, despite the fact that we control movement. Kara moves for us in the cutscenes. Also, despite them mostly controlling the options, I don't think Kara would flirt with their mom. So not only can we conclude that control is split, we can also put flirting as something in Frisk's personality rather than Kara's. We also have the true pacifist ending scene where Frisk just denies us a prompt. So we do have instances of control being shared between the 3 of us in all directions. You may think I've just held a grudge for the past 11 years, but this is actually important to understand. I know about this FAQ question, and some people have taken it to mean that there's no reason to think about Undertale at all when discussing this game. At least with how things like the lore and world building works. But I need to ask you, do you genuinely think nothing from Undertale matters here? Do you really, honestly believe that Toby Fox made a game, called it a parallel story, used all the same characters, saving and loading and racing, working in exactly the same way, and then made all new systems for each of them, Or is it more likely they meant it in the way of, yeah, there aren't dark worlds in Undertale, and I'll break the rules if I want to. But overall, the games actually help inform each other a lot because he expects you to have played both. Yes, the 3 save files work the same way as 1 save file in Undertale. Kris doesn't have 3 souls, it's because they're in different timelines. Go check Asriel's drawer in Chapter 1. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, narration is the same. Yes, I will be disagreeing with a really made video from 4 years ago. I get it. You watched it when it came out and agreed with its entire non-conclusion that Toby Fox wrote the game. If that sounds like you, I'd invest in global warming because we're gonna need an influx of pirates for there to be enough shoulders for all you parrots to sit on. He literally didn't come to a conclusion. He just wanted the video to be cool, so he did a transition to epic music. And it worked! But I've had to deal with people repeating this video to me for the past 4 years, so I'm ranting about it now. I mean, seriously, think, man. If you didn't spend so much time making your videos well-made, entertaining, properly edited, visually interesting, fun, exuberantly scored, well-oiled, fantastically audio-balanced, deliciously PNG'd, hiding Easter eggs within it, timing the visuals with the music, dynamically fostering discussion, reading 300,000 million billion comments a week, animated just in general really, extremely well-researched despite not being perfect, conveying large amounts of information in an easy-to-digest way, busting it down sexual styles despite not actually being goated with the sauce, some other 18th thing. Belying an aura of an appealing smell-generating apparatus in the room it's made in, demolishing counter-arguments by using events that actually happen in the game, putting in the legwork to document the information you need if it isn't already available, Beppis, being able to perform musical analysis, performing musical analysis, media analysis, displaying media literacy of at least a college-age reading level, playing Deltarune, doing things that aren't just playing Deltarune to become a well-rounded individual, and also making quite literally the only Hades-like to have what I believe is more fun gameplay than Hades 2. If you hadn't been doing all of that, you could have spent more time being right. So let's go over the specifics, starting with something big that I think Andrew missed. In the Light World, we just straight up have the same rules for narration as Undertale, which is why that one time they accidentally used the word Kris in narration, it was patched out, meaning that this isn't a mystery, and the intent was actually clarified thoroughly because the mistake was removed. Not coming to this conclusion immediately may be a sign of worms of the brain. In the Dark World, it depends on who is doing what, like all the time, and it's very conditional. Like items always use the name of whoever used them. In Chapter 1, when we view Susie instead of Kris and Rousey, it counts as them leaving the party, so the narrator notes that they come back. This is all important to notice because that means we're not just controlling Kris, we're controlling the party, even if they don't always listen to us. The weirdness and inconsistency come from when we're still in the Dark World, and we get you anyways, because we're not doing party controlling thing. However, the battle narration is where this gets really solid. So back in Chapter 1, we got the Jebel fight. This narration rule is subtly hinted at by the narrator saying, I don't know what the hell to do against this guy, he's so not in the prophecy he doesn't even get a motif. Immediately followed up with the only 2 acts in the whole battle being performed with the text Kris instead of you. This was never changed because it's always supposed to be like this. In Chapter 2, we get the iconic Weird Route scene. You whispered Noelle's name. This was supposed to be taken as establishing the rule absolutely, so we fully understood it. But because everyone forgot about the Jebel fight from like 3 years ago, it instead got labeled as an exception. Then in Chapter 3, in all fights against Shadowmen, we can see that it says Kris instead of you when busting it down Dreamer style. What I interpret this as meaning is that when it says Kris, it means it was Kris who came up with the idea for the act. It's not like in Undertale where we have to figure out who came up with each act by trying to figure out if Carol would flirt with their own mom. The game just tells us. Kris is in the role of the hero for our Trinity of Control, so they still get to interpret each command we give them, but it's not their idea to flirt with Hathy. That would be the narrator. Items probably just say the name because then they just code it to grab the name of the party member who used it, and that way they never have to look at it again. I love efficiency being incorporated into my lore. As part of the nuance, since Kris is in the hero role, even when it says you, Kris is still who we're getting information about. Like when we click on the pop-up ads in Chapter 2, those are ads catered towards Kris. It's just that they know internet safety and wouldn't click on an ad, so it specifies that the narrator is the one coming up with the idea. Also, I made this image on the right and forgot to use it, so here you go. So wait, who is the narrator? In Undertale, it's pretty clear who makes up the Trinity. In fact, at the end of the game, we just get told who the narrator is. It's a trinity of Frisk, Kara, and the player. But in Deltarune, all we know for sure is that we have the player and Kris, who could possibly be the narrator. That's right, there's only one thing left. The Red Soul. This even explains why Kris can rip it out so easily, compared to Frisk. Because instead of having control over their body and control over their soul split, we're just piloting the soul that's controlling Kris. So Kris's body can only be influenced in a limited way in a short range by this soul. This would also mean that the Red Soul isn't their soul, and I will now be spending some time doing a talking about that. Are they the second voice who discarded our vessel and manages all of our menus and has secretly been working with Jastilian Rapture the whole time? Can actor theory still win? Maybe. All we really have to go off of is that Gaster does not care if we do the weird route. He just wants us to play his Deltarune, #his Deltarune, and that the Red Soul is aligned with this goal. We can tell because it lets us do the weird route. It also lets us do things like flirt with enemies, so it's at least acting like someone we know. It also seems to know not just the prophecy, but also the game Undertale fully, and all the choices we can make throughout Deltarune already, even if we don't make them. It might also cry later. I hope you guys are as familiar with Undertale as I am, because the entire right column and left column and bottom of the screen is just from Deltarune. And it kind of doesn't make sense for any of this to be on screen if you don't know which ones are just direct references to the first game. But either way, I don't think we can say for certain who the Red Soul is right now. A lot of people think we're literally the Red Soul because of stuff like the song Your Power playing when we cleanse fountains. But that is literally Tony's ultimate trick. None of us are important to the story. Does a book need you to turn the pages to exist? No, the book is written. The story is already fully there. So why is he doing that? Also, if we really are important and the game needs my power, #mypower, then that means I better start Chapter 5 without completion data in the stomach of a titan because none of the fountains would be closed. That said, I'm out of time though, moving on. Why is Kris blue? Part 1. Who they aren't. Kris is not Kara. This cactus narration happens in the second room, when the game released in 2018, and people still think Kris is Kara's equivalent, but I didn't. I never did, thanks to my huge, rippling brain caverns. Kara is not actually associated with knives. Do you actually believe the child who died before they even got their knife gifted to them, which was intended as a gardening tool, is more associated with knives than the kid who always drops into the underground with a knife and has a full screen covering attack using 1 William knives? It sounds pretty bad when you say it out loud like that, huh? This stuff on screen is just what I remembered off the top of my head while making this, and it's not entirely exhaustive, but it's enough to make my point. Second, Kris is not Frisk. Since we know it's not something Kris would do unless it says Kris in the Dark World narration, we know flirting is not something Kris would normally do. As we discussed earlier, flirting is something Frisk absolutely would do. So I get why this happens, because it's subtle. But once you notice the you versus Kris narration thing, there's no going back. Most of the similarities are from the soul acting like Frisk, for whatever reason. Maybe the soul is literally Frisk's soul from Undertale or Deltarune's doomed future. Probably not, I don't think that. I know both Frisk and Kris have the bandage armor, except they don't even have that. Because in Undertale, it's a bandage, like a wrap. In Deltarune, it's a bandage like a band-aid. We can infer this by looking at the weird description for using the bandage in Undertale, where it's mentioned it's been used several times, and yet it's still kinda goopy. Band-aids don't even last one application. Maybe that's like a me thing, but a lot of the time, they just fall off after like 6 hours. Meanwhile, in Deltarune, nobody ever brings up Kris having an injury, so it's probably just actually a band-aid. If that's not enough for you, in the Japanese text for the games, this is explicitly stated because there isn't a middle ground word for bandage in Japanese. And yes, almost all similarities between Kris and Frisk are like this. It's either coincidental, like that they're both emoji colored, or it's deceit, like the bandage. There's more, I promise, but again, this is very condensed. Why is Kris blue? Part 2. The really obvious part. Yes, I do believe the character with a special ribbon just for them, who we know has a knife on them at all times, is the parallel universe version of the kid who had a toy knife and a ribbon with them. This isn't even close to a stretch anymore, especially not after Toby put Kris's specific game over theme in the 10th anniversary stream in the area where dad number 3 picked up the toy knife. You guys have it so easy these days, I'm serious. Back in the day, I was having to explain how in Ball Game, when you get the only color where you have to do something specific to get it instead of just stay fast enough time, which is how you get the Patience Soul color, Cyan, it's also the only one with a description clear enough for you to actually figure out exactly what the narration is talking about, which is successfully dethroning a member of royalty, which would have had to have been Asgore. I was also having to point out that Kara looks the same age as Asriel in Undertale, but Asriel being notably older than Kris and Deltarune lines up with the toy knife kid being implied to fall into the underground first after Kara died, which means Asgore was probably still pissed off. Their Ball Game quote is about successfully defeating Asgore when he's plausibly actually trying to win, meaning Toby really wanted Kris to be very skilled since, I don't know, probably the Undertale demo, if not earlier. Why they didn't escape the underground afterwards falls under fanfiction, though absorbing the soul of a man so divorced, he's divorced in the alternate universe where he didn't become racist after 2 of his kids died in front of him, might explain that. I was explaining how Kiss kicking the robot at the end of Spanton's basement quest wasn't actually proof that they aren't patient, and even if it is, the soul with all their patience isn't in them right now anyways. I can't even get into all of the minute reasons, like hiding under Noelle's bed being emblematic of the patient's archetype, nor disputing any other counter-evidence, because I'm like, dude, I am on such a harsh time limit for this. Does this kill Vessel Kris Kressel theory? No, it just means Kris would be a goner clone of the Toy Knife Kid, if you think that has to be there. I personally don't think it's necessary. Like, the Vessel stuff is coming from the Red Soul, who might have even believed that they were made for the vessel, right? Wild rigmarole. Why do this? What is Toby trying to hide? Welcome, viewers, to the actual theory part of the video. That's right. I'm so egotistical that everything from before this point is not only the basis for the theories, it's also what I believe to be solidly, factually, the author's intent when writing the story. But before that, please click the social media buttons. If you like the video, you'll get more Deltarune theories. If you comment, you'll get more Deltarune theories. If you subscribe, you'll get more of me. And if you hit that bell, you'll always get all of me and more Deltarune stuff. I could pull the viewer retention and subscriber ratio graph for this thing, but I won't because I respect your time and your intelligence and know that you are a lovely human being. And, you know, if you don't know what to put in the comments, here's a comment idea. Put what you think of all this in the comments now. Like, assuming all of this theory is so far as true, what theory would you make? Then edit it after you finish the video to see what you agree on. Please, guys, I don't even get AdSense. My channel is kind of homeless. And then I cut, like in the middle of the crying part. Yeah, the Chapter 1 ending is probably a big part of why the game was written to confuse us on Kris's identity so much. It's to the point that instead of just believing Kris might be their own person, I see a lot of people, to this day, think that Kris is an unholy fusion of Frisk and Kara, as like a human being. They are a fusion of 2 kids from another universe that were alive at least 100 years apart. Like, it's a really well-hidden twist, and all the conflicting evidence is done really well. But if all it was for the Chapter 1 ending, wouldn't it just be told to us by now? What could totally be planning for us to still not get that reveal? Mild spoilers for the ending of Mother 3, but I'll mostly just be saying this in terms of Deltarune. You know how at the end of True Pacifist Undertale, we get to walk around and talk to everyone again? That's actually, you get to do that in Earthbound, too. That's what Toby's referencing when you can do that. This is Mother 3's version of that, but if you want to skip, I'm giving you time now to skip to the next slide. I'm kind of just bringing it up because of how much Toby draws from his inspirations at times. At the end of Mother 3, the world is covered in darkness, but you, the player, get to talk to everyone. What if the ending of Deltarune is a redux on the Undertale ending walkaround, but our soul gets put into the vessel, so we get to walk around and talk to everyone, including Kris, with their cyan soul back in their body, hearing their voice for the first time. Hiding that we're piloting a different soul than the one Kris was born with would allow this moment to hit crazy style. But that begs the question, where is the soul right now? Well, I have a few possibilities on where it could be. Here's the bottom 4 of my top 5 candidates in no specific order on where I think Kris's soul is. Like I said in my last video, there must be a doppelganger for Kris. It is impossible to believe otherwise, unless you just think the scenes we see in the game don't matter. I said one of the possible identities for that doppelganger is the Shadow Mantle holder, who happens to be a Darkner who looks like Kris. Being a demon who stole Kris's soul would give them ample in-universe reason to look like them, and it would also give what they say about knowing what you're really like some haunting weight behind it. There's also the Roaring Knight, who is physically the second strongest character between both Deltarune and Undertale, quite literally only behind both Omega Flowey and the Absolute God of Hyperdeath, and that's when we've only seen it holding back. If human and monster fusions are still a thing in Deltarune, TRK having Kris's soul would go hand in hand with how powerful they are. Though it's not really necessary, given that we see their core is all white like a monster soul, and they clearly have a complete form of darkness under their control. So that's why it stays down here. There's also the door. It has a big heart on it, and 6 angel wings. Could Kris be the angel? Probably not. But if you needed a safe place to store your soul, the castle with a big locked heart door soul-shaped door symbol on it would probably be a place to do it. This one is definitely the bottom of my top 5. Mostly it's an old Chapter 2 era theory because the way people talk about Parenthesis and Deltarune pisses me off. There's also the I'm wrong about all of these, but someone does specifically have Kris's cyan soul for some reason, even if they haven't absorbed it. I know a lot of people like the idea of Ralze being their soul, but given how badly he interacts with Kris sometimes, I don't think that's the case. But these are only the bottom 4 of my top 5. So next we're going to get into my number 1 slot. But before that, we need to talk about some counter-evidence. If Kris is the toy knife kid, why do they fight with a sword instead of a knife? Well, Kris doesn't currently have the cyan soul in them, but they do have a red soul. And what's that associated with? That's right, a stick. And pencils are just sharpened sticks. Now tell me, what is the fantasy of playing with a stick? That's right, playing swords. What I'm saying is, in Dark Worlds, we get the fantasy weapon of what we bring in. I don't think weapons are intrinsically tied to soul colors most of the time, though. Like, Susie has an axe, not a notebook, despite Gerson talking about her perseverance. But that begs the question, what is the fantasy of a knife? It's a good question, because a knife is something that's already very cool. But you can always go higher. Like instead of a normal knife, it could be upgraded into a beautiful, ceremonial, Kris-bladed dagger. That's the real name, that's how you spell it and say it, Kris Blade. But it doesn't stop there. Kris currently gets a sword and a shield. But what if they got more than one knife? Think like the dual blades from Monster Hunter. But why stop at 2? I mean, the Silent never stopped at 2 shivs. What if they got a bunch of knives, like to throw at you? They do have that killer throwing arm. Kris could be very, very accurate with them. And you know another thing? Knights don't really use knives or daggers. But you know who does? Rogues, thieves, bandit types, you know? The ones that focus more on evasion than being hit. What if, when Kris got the red soul, they also swapped their cyan soul into the vessel, and all of that is going to be revealed in the maybe weird or regular route chapter whatever secret final boss against Vessel Kris, who throws 1 William knives at us and dodges our attacks. Also, because they wouldn't have a face, since it's the vessel body, the fight would reuse the sound mechanic from chapter 4 in some way, since Vessel Kris would not have eyes. Because Sans Undertale genocide monologue secret real knife reference real. Also, what if there were like 3 total Krises? Kris-I? Do you say it plural like Yeti? Yeti? But yeah, I feel like I need to defend this somewhat. As I already said, I don't think the Shadow Mantle holder has the cyan soul as much as I think it's in the vessel. Which means that if I'm right, there's literally 3 Kris-I going around. I do want to go beyond just saying, it would be so awesome. It would be so cool. Something I think a lot of people ignore is that there is a lot of Trinity symbolism in these games. Not just the rule of 3s, right? Like actual religious Trinity symbolism. I don't have any time to go over that right now, though, so instead I'm just going to say that if this happens, it would mean that Kris would be at the center of 3 Trinities. A Triforce of Krinities, which would complete the motif, considering that without any of my theory crafting, they're already in 2 of them. The Trinity of the 3 heroes in the Deltarune itself is just canon. The Trinity of Kris, the Red Soul, and the player is just canon. With this theory, Kris would have a 3rd Trinity to be a part of, and also it would go epic style, hard on the sauce. There is also the question of logistics, like if the red soul isn't Kris's soul, why can they hold it inside of their body? Well, it could just be that the red soul is special and compatible with many bodies, and the empty vessel is designed in the same way, so they're just flexible and compatible with everything. Or even like human bodies can always absorb one soul, so soul swapping could be all the unethical rage in an era or two, or something. But what if that's not how it works? What would that mean? So we all know at this point that Kris is almost definitely going to lose their hand, probably by Chapter 7, since we all already know the details of, and on all of our souls, we all believe in the shadow crystals are showing events in reverse order theory is true. But, like, what would that do? What would Kris losing their hand actually do, both mechanically for the gameplay and in-universe? In the rated M for mature video game, Lisa the Painful, the character Brad can lose both of his arms. If he loses them, he loses access to his combos entirely and a bunch of special moves. Yes, they sold a plush of Brad with removable arms and a blue not Peepus thing. You cannot buy this anymore. What if that's the same idea here? Like, let's look at how Kris does it. They defend with the shield in their left hand, and when they act, it's the right hand. What if there's a decision on which hand Kris loses? We could lose the left hand and lose access to defending and attacking, only able to act and spare. Or give up the right hand to keep defending and attacking. This sounds really cool, except, Kris uses two hands to swing the sword. This seems like a huge oversight, but hear me out. What if, when Kris and the vessel swap souls, they also had to switch a hand to have each other's soul be compatible with their body? There is a really subtle detail I can't personally confirm, but when Kris plays piano in the Holiday Manor vent scenario, apparently they make more mistakes with their right hand. I know this might just be because we know Toby is playing the piano and he has an injury on his right hand, but he had 4 years to get the exact recording he wanted for this scene, which means either I'm completely stupid and insane, or this is the biggest long-shot call of my life that Toby Fox played the piano worse with his injured hand as foreshadowing. Because without the right hand, their body would no longer be compatible with the red soul, and we get ejected. Then we would be forced to go back to our vessel, who would be revealed to have one blue hand, earlier probably. Also, they'd probably have red skin in Dark World, which I forgot to mention earlier for some reason. And also the vessel hand has adapted to Kris's hand colors arbitrarily for a reason to hide this, in a contrivance kind of way, or something. Also, the vessel doesn't have a face, which would be why we lose the ability to act even though we're in a new body. Because if this is true, Kris either loses their right hand, which they need to be compatible with the vessel body, or we get the post-game walk-around in the vessel in a pacifist plate. This would fall under the "there's only one ending" theme of the game, since by the end of the non-weird routes at least, we end up in the vessel either way. This would also line up with the love versus hate room in Chapter 3, though I might have this whole thing backwards, since the yellow cage wins in the hate battle. Also, some of the save points say Kris reached out their hand singular, like they can only use its power from one of their hands, with the exception of the weird route, which could be implying something cool. Or none of this matters, Kris losing their hand is just so they die and then someone else absorbs the soul. Maybe I'm right about the hand thing and the Kris soul dodging our attacks battle anyways though. Like all I'm really 100 sure on out of my theories is that we're getting the doppelganger fight in some way or another by the end of the game. With that, we move into the outro. Except not really, because I'm still pissed off about this! Guys, I'm so mad. I don't even care that the meme is horribly misaligned and there's a white line on the side, but it keeps happening. Nothing I do matters. I already made my previous video, but people are so entrenched at this point that even when I show them clips of the scene happening, they just write it off. Then I try to explain that it doesn't make sense for anyone to think Mini Kris looks like Kris in any dimension or reality, and they just brush it off again. I'm not just sending people my video either, I'm trying to explain it to them one-on-one, and it doesn't matter. There's no reasoning with these people. Even when I succeed. Most recently, I had someone who I managed to get to agree with me that it doesn't make sense to mistake Hero Sword for a full-sized Kris. So they came up with an alternate explanation than the doppelganger, which is cool. Let's hear them out. You know, maybe I missed something. Their idea was that this is actually foreshadowing a future ability that will unlock. That in the future, Kris will gain the ability to turn into a pixelated gnome to enter small holes. They only came up with this because they already decided they have to believe friend ram theory. What are we doing with our lives? Like, I get it. We can't take what we see on screen at 100% fact all the time. For example, even though in Undertale, where it's implied that battles are basically literal for what we see, we can't really apply that same logic to Deltarune. I'm not even saying that the battles aren't turn-based, or that we're not standing apart from each other in a line, or even that they're actually hitting each other instead of just swinging weapons and manifesting attacks on the other side of the screen. What I am saying is that I don't think Susie is standing perfectly still while watching a hammer in a green box, dodging many a hammer and thinking to herself, "Damn, I'm good." Also, the box is green for lore reasons probably. Basically, the Roaring Gaster Image Friend Depths red, Layers Green Freedom Strings Light Penumbra Phantasm. Shoutouts to Device Theory. So then I asked the question, is the scene where we see the hero sword not leaving the room actually proof that we should consider thinking about it harder? Yes. I'm done discussing it. If you actually think otherwise, I literally don't believe you've thought about it unless you're willing to put money on it. I will also be matching other theorists who put up copies of the game to back their predictions that oppose mine. Up to 10. Probably not everyone, just to prevent random commenters from driving up the amount of potential copies I give away, you know? But if you make a video on it or a big post, and it's not literally your first thing about Deltarune, tell me about it and I'll probably add it to the pot. I'm literally so sure of myself, I'm not going to research how to do a giveaway until after I know I actually got this prediction wrong. To be 100% clear, if it is not revealed who the doppelganger is in Chapter 5, nothing happens. The doppelganger I'm talking about is whoever passed by the rabbit in Chapter 3 that looks like Kris and isn't the Hero Sword mini Kris. If we get a doppelganger fight against robots built by Queen in Castletown, I'm not going to claim I won. But I will most likely re-up the Losers Only Deltarune Copies giveaway not gambling ring for Chapter 6. If we meet Mike in Chapter 5, and he's slightly orange and a shapeshifter, I will still consider that a victory, even though I think a different option is more likely. Also, I'm doing this for every night identity that isn't December holiday, a separate pool of 3 to 10. I don't care about your hours-long essays about Rudy Knight. I don't care about your level 0 red herring inversion self-consuming Carol Knight videos. I don't care about whatever is causing your inability to think rationally that generates the Azrael Knight theory. I can't think of something mean for Noel Knight theory because I don't really understand it at all. Krite also. Also any other candidate I don't know about. Shut up. Put your money up. Let's see what happens. Now, to be 100% clear on what I consider Death Knight, that would include if she's being controlled by something else as long as it's her body or soul. It would also include a Darkner Death, like how Rousey seems to be very similar to Azrael. If TRK is technically a Darkner that's very similar to Death, I'm counting that as a win. If in Chapter 5 we get to slime the Roaring Knight in the weird route, and then we see Kris's soul pop out and crack and explode on screen, I'm not going to think that Kris Knight is real. I'm going to think that Death fused with Kris's soul until absolutely proven otherwise. Though any Kris Knighters will also count as winning in that scenario. Again, if there is no reveal in Chapter 5, nothing happens, though I will re-up this bet in Chapter 6. Weird clause. If it's really convoluted, like say the Knight's identity depends on which save file roll you're playing on, or the Roaring Knight is Death, but Death is actually Noelle from the future who traveled back in time to become the Roaring Knight and be her own older sister, even though multiple groups could be right in those scenarios. At that point, let's just all agree none of us thought that was actually going to happen and give away 1 copy each. Also, if I actually have to give away 20 copies of the game, that's at least $500, and it might take a while. So don't expect me to do it all at once for a publicity stunt I didn't make money off of. Also, Papyrus Knight is excluded because I genuinely think it's too stupid to believe anymore, and I just won't believe it on principle. So I just won't be adding your copies to the tally. Now to clarify how to increase my wager. By matching, I mean matching the total amount of copies of the game bet against me. So if 4 different people all wager 1 copy, and I believe them, I will have to increase my bet to 4 copies, since 4 is bigger than 3. Again, this maxes out at 10, and the pools for Knight Identity and Doppelganger existing are separate. Alright, let's do the outro for real. Thank you for watching my video, and also liking and commenting and subscribing since I asked that presumably more than 10 minutes ago. I'm kind of exhausted, so I just really want to say thank you. This one is a lot. I know I got way more aggressive than last time, and I hope you'll accept my kayfabe at its heel value for the fun of what I'm doing. The wager thing is actually real, though, and if you tell people, more people will get pissed off about how egotistical I am in this video, and also do their own Deltarune copy giveaways. That way you rats who haven't even been playing the game this whole time will finally get to embrace Toby's artistic mastery firsthand. Which I still have a guide for getting into Deltarune for the first time that still does not currently have a guide on making perfect save files without spoilers. I got interrupted by the game coming out in 2 weeks, I'm sorry. Or you'll just get a copy for the Switch too, so you can finally play the exclusive mic room. Who knows? Also, hey, you guys know the Roots video with 1 million views? That guy is collecting people in his Discord server so we can share our replies for the Deltarune ARG we get the day before release, which should be like 2 days after this video goes up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out Gold Pro's newest video on it. And again, just like, I know this one sucks even more than my last PowerPoint presentation. I'm barely getting this out on time. I've been so busy. I've been working more so I can have Wednesday off. But really, if you watch the end of this one, I do appreciate it. I hope my crazy voice is enough. I hope my regular voice is enough to carry a video like this. I really do appreciate everyone who makes it this far. Also, Rude Buster is probably December holidays motif, and the important flower is because Azrael used the Talker Backer toy from Chapter 3 to talk to it, so that's why we get a ton of lore about it, because Azrael talked to it all the time. And Asgore dies in Chapter 5 because Des is actually doing all of this as a revenge plot, and then she starts the warring. Goodbye.